This week's episode of the Moonlight Graham Show is brought to you by the People's Company. That's right, they are back as a sponsor because so often I hear from farmers throughout Iowa and throughout the Midwest who are listening to the podcast while they are planting, while they are harvesting. They're in their tractors, they're in their combines, which makes the People's Company a perfect partner for the Moonlight Graham Show here. As you guys probably well know, the People's Company is based in West Des Moines, Iowa, but they've really grown to be one of the nation's leading providers in land brokerage, land management, land appraisal, and investment services. These guys, and I know Andrew Zelmer and Matt Adams over there at the People's Company, these guys live and breathe farmland, farm management, and they know that industry better than anybody. So if you're looking to buy a farm, sell a farm, having an auction coming up, call the People's Company. They are the best in the business. Check them out at peoplescompany.com.
This is the Moonlight Graham Show, a freewheeling conversation with the role players, the underdogs, and guys with flat-out great stories in sports.
Hello and welcome back to the Moonlight Graham Show. Once again, I'm your host, Tim Flattery, and as you well know, this is a podcast that celebrates the underdog. And our Moonlighter this week is the greatest underdog the National Football League has ever seen. He is the greatest undrafted free agent. In the week of the NFL draft, he is the greatest undrafted free agent in the National Football League's history. He needs no introduction. But his name is Kurt Warner. That's right. You remember him as Kurt Warner, the guy who went to Cedar Rapids, Regis High School. After Cedar Rapids, Regis, Kurt Warner went on to University of Northern Iowa, where he sat on the bench for 4 whole years as a backup quarterback before taking over the reins as a fifth-year senior to win Conference Offensive Player of the Year in his 5th year. After Northern Iowa, you guys know this story well. He was in training camp with the Packers but didn't make it. He ended up playing for the Iowa Barnstormers from 1995 through 1997. Of course, it's been talked about. He had a night job at Hy Vee bagging groceries during that time. After the Barnstormers, he played for the Amsterdam Admirals in Amsterdam, not even in this country, and then he got another shot in the NFL with the Rams in 1998. In 1999, coming into the season, the Rams had a lot of high hopes. Trent Green was their starting quarterback going into that season. In the preseason, Trent Green goes down with a knee injury, and who steps up but Kurt Warner, who at that point, the nation did not know anything about Kurt Warner. And during that 1999 season, he basically rewrites the NFL passing record book. He wins the NFL MVP. He leads the Rams to the Super Bowl title. He wins the NFL Super Bowl MVP award that year. Kurt then goes on to lead the Rams back to the Super Bowl in 2001, where they were beat on a last-second field goal by Adam Vinatieri and the Patriots, of course. In 2004, Kurt, he went to the New York Giants. He moved on to the Cardinals from 2005 to 2009, leads the Cardinals to the Super Bowl in 2008. And if it wasn't for Ben Roethlisberger and Santonio Holmes with that miraculous catch at the end of the Super Bowl that year, Kurt would have won almost another Super Bowl ring. He's truly one of the greatest NFL quarterbacks the world has ever seen. He got inducted into the NFL Hall of Fame in 2017. So almost 20 years after bagging groceries, Kurt Warner was in the NFL Hall of Fame. It's truly a remarkable story. You could not have made up this script in Hollywood and had anyone believe it, but it needs to be made into a movie, and thank God they are making the Kurt Warner story into a movie this year. I can't wait to watch that, and I think you guys are going to love this week's episode with Kurt Warner. Not only is the guy a great Iowan, not only is he a great quarterback, not only is he a great guy, but he's also a great interview, and I think you guys are really going to enjoy this interview in this episode of the Moonlight Graham Show. And if you like what we're doing here on the podcast, make sure to subscribe to the Moonlight Graham Show wherever you get your podcast, whether it's Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher. Subscribe to the Moonlight Graham Show, and you know the drill. Leave us a 5-star review. You can also follow the show on social media, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. We love hearing from you guys each and every week. Enjoy this week's episode with the greatest undrafted free agent in NFL history, one of the greatest underdog stories ever, Kurt Warner. But before we get to our interview, I know it's a tough time right now and a lot of people are out of work. So I wanted to talk about a new sponsor we have on the show, buildiowa.org, because the construction industry, especially throughout the Midwest, is still up and running and hiring. And so I was just on this website, buildiowa.org, and what really stood out to me was how much the professional men and women in this industry make. Did you know that professional estimators on average make between $62,000 and $80,000 a year? How about crane operators? What a cool job that is. They make between $60,000 and $70,000 a year on average. The other great part about buildiowa.org is how they spell out exactly how you can get started in the 27 different careers they have listed on the website. They have active resources to companies that are training and hiring. That's right, hiring right now. We know some of you Moonlighters are looking for a career change, or perhaps you've been impacted by this pandemic. If that's you, head on over to buildiowa.org and check out the incredible careers available right now in the construction industry. There's also a link to a job board that lists active jobs that are open right now. The good people at Build Iowa are here to help, and they want to make you aware that there are rewarding career options available for you. And for those of you on social media, check them out. You can find them Build Iowa on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn. That's right, buildiowa.org. We're called the Moonlight Graham Show, and our show is based around celebrating the role players and the underdogs in sports. And I think you're probably the greatest underdog story ever to come out of the state of Iowa.
I don't know about all that, but I'm blessed, and my story is definitely unique. I'll give you that. And I wouldn't have it any other way. It's for a long time it was one of those things where I wished it would be any other way, and then when you kind of get through it and you start looking back, you're grateful that you've got a story unlike anybody else's. And what I've realized is that a lot of people can associate more with my story than most athletes' stories, because so many of those guys had so many things go right for them, and it just doesn't always mirror real life. So that's been a cool part of it, is being able to kind of encourage people and inspire people through my journey, even though it was in a kind of a different walk of life.
Now, I saw a video of you just the other day playing catch with your son out in the yard, and it looks like you can still launch it about 50 yards. How often do you get out there and play catch with your son?
Well, now that he's back, so my son plays wide receiver at the University of Nebraska.
Yeah.
And so he's back, obviously, through the craziness here. And so we get out there about every day. I've also got a younger son that plays quarterback as well in high school, and so we'll get out there about every day and throw the ball around to some capacity, just trying to keep his hands moving. And every once in a while he'll be running routes, and then working with my other son. So at this point in time, when we've got a lot of time on our hands, we're out there about every day.
Now, I notice you still put the gloves on to throw. Is that something that you're always wearing the glove now every time you're throwing the ball?
Not every time, but I tell you what, it's funny that when I was first starting to play, and then there's a couple times we'd play in cold weather, and I'd throw some gloves on and try to get used to them to play with them in a game, and it just felt awful. It didn't feel normal not having gloves on. And now it's exactly the opposite, that I've played with them for so long that even when I go in the backyard and grab a football, I feel like I need to have the gloves on, because I guess it's like a working man, that I don't have those calluses and stuff, from throwing a football and being able to grip it on a normal basis. So I just feel more comfortable with the gloves. Actually just had some people from Nike send me some new gloves since I've been out throwing a little bit more. And so for whatever reason, it just feels more comfortable now. So I try to throw them on whenever I can.
I love following your Twitter, because it seems like you're the type of guy that you got to get a good workout in every day, whether it's throwing with your boys out at the football field or getting some shots up. What's a daily workout look like for you?
It's different, but you're right. I mean, I've told myself a long time ago, especially after retirement, that my whole goal was to stay in shape. Don't let yourself get out of shape and then have to get back in shape. So that's kind of my motto, is do something every day, and there'll be weeks, obviously, or, oftentimes I'll take a day off throughout the week just to recover. But that's kind of my mindset. And so it could change. One day I might not be motivated and I might just go in and do 15 minutes of cardio. And another day I might get an hour and a half in with cardio and lifting and shooting baskets. So really just change it up and however I feel that day or however much time I have that day. But I am trying to get something in, usually at least a little cardio just about every day. And then I like to change it up. I've been, running more sprints. The other day I ran kind of some ladders, 5 and back, 10 and back, 25 and back. Just trying to change it up. Today I did a basketball workout, and with my son, we got a couple games that we play that we'll just go out there and just a nice way to get a sweat going and do something more fun than just jumping on a cardio machine and going at it. So we're always trying to create different opportunities that make it a little more fun to work out and stay in shape.
Nice. I love that. So I'm looking up your high school hoop stats. You mentioned basketball. And what's funny about, 1989 high school basketball in the state of Iowa, first team All-State in the Des Moines Register. You had Chris Street on that team. Second team, you had Fred Hoiberg on that team. And you were the third team All-State hoops, which I think is, 3 pretty legendary Iowa athletes right there in the Register All-State teams. Who was the best high school basketball player you ever played against?
Oh my gosh. Oh man, that's a great question. Cam Johnson, who ended up playing at UNI, was a really good high school player that I played against. He was crosstown rival, so I got to play against him a lot. I was actually on an AAU team with him. He was probably the best scorer that I ever played against. But going through high school, there's so many good players that play different positions and do different things well, but he was a really good high school player that I remember competing against a lot.
Yeah, and then you, of course, went on to UNI to play there, and famously, you redshirt a year, you're behind Jay Johnson for 3 years on that depth chart. But you guys had a ton of talent there for the Panthers while you were there. I know Bryce Popp was there early on in your days. You had Andre Allen, Kenny Shedd, Dedrick Ward. But I also read an article from your days back there that said the guy with the best arm on the team was Timmy Mosley. What type of athlete was Timmy Mosley?
Oh, Timmy was a great athlete. He was one of those tall, lean athletes, so he could just do anything. And yeah, when it came to throwing the football, he had that long arm, so it was just like a whip, and he could just launch it a mile. But I mean, Timmy could do anything. He could jump. Obviously, he could catch. He could run. He could throw. Just a natural, lean athlete. And that was a fun thing is back in college, we did a lot of things. So when we were in football season, just about every day, we were over, playing basketball. And, Timmy was one of the guys that lived in my dorm. And so we would go over there and play all the time and just compete. And so we had a lot of guys that were really good athletes, that went way beyond the football field.
Was it frustrating for you sitting behind Jay Johnson for those 3 years after the redshirt year?
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, I think anytime, especially when you're used to playing, most of us through high school, we're kind of the star or the main guy in our team. And so to go from that to sitting on the bench for 4 years was really rough. That was one of the toughest, probably the toughest stretch in my career. Just because you're not used to it. You don't know how to handle not playing. That's all you've ever done. That's all you've ever wanted to do was compete and play. And obviously we all kind of look at ourselves a little bit better than we usually are. And I felt like I was the better quarterback as well. And so all of those things tied up together was really tough to sit back and watch. But, the bottom line was we were successful and Jay was successful and he knew how to lead and win. And so that was a hard thing. That was a hard thing to overcome, the success that we were having as a football team. And so you sit back and you understand from a coach's perspective, the main goal is to win and to have a guy out there that can help you win and not make mistakes. And Jay was that guy, but it was extremely frustrating, trying to figure out why and what do I have to do and is there anything that I can do and having a dream of playing beyond college, what do I do here since I'm on the bench and this guy's 1 year ahead of me, that if it does play out like it is, I'm going to get 1 year to play, considering if everything goes correctly. So it was a tough time trying to wrestle with all of that and figure out what was the right thing to do and what was the best thing to do and how do I get better in a situation where I'm not playing. And so it was a difficult time for me, but I think I grew a lot and both as a person and as a player through that period of time. And some of the things that I applied to life and to football beyond that, came from that difficult period of waiting and sitting back and figuring out what I could do even when I wasn't on the field.
Now, famously, the part of your story that Iowans love so much is the Iowa Barnstormers tie-in, and you go to the Iowa Barnstormers, you tear it up for like 3 seasons there. And one of the things that you read over and over again about that time is, Kurt Warner really developed his quick release and his quick decision-making while playing for the Barnstormers. How much of that, though, was arena football helped reveal the talent that you had? Because finally, you were able to showcase your skills on TV and on a national stage. And how much of it was the arena game really helped you develop those skills?
I don't really know. I think it goes back to the old argument, what came first, the chicken or the egg?
Yeah.
And, I think the same holds true here is, I don't know. I mean, I don't know if those were things that were inside of me and things that I was going to be good at regardless, or if arena football forced me to have to become that or forced that out of me, so to speak. And so I don't know which was the case, but I know without a doubt that time in arena football really honed my skills and shaped me as a player. And, those things that you had to do in arena football and the things that I was good at in arena football were things that became my greatest strengths in the NFL. And so without a doubt, the Arena Football League was vital to my development as a quarterback. It's just hard to answer, was I perfect for arena football, or was it arena football that was perfect for me at that time to catapult me to where I ended up going? So don't know the answer, but I'm grateful for my time there. And I sit back now all the time and I look at where the league is and where guys like myself would be in this day and age. And there's no league like the Arena League. There's no NFL Europe like I got to play in. And so I was so excited for the AAF and then the other league that was going just recently, the XFL.
Yep.
And the opportunities for guys like myself who maybe had fallen through the cracks to get another opportunity. And so such a bummer, obviously the virus is much bigger than football, but, bummer from that standpoint, from a football perspective, that I thought the XFL really had a chance and was, doing some really good things that was going to propel some guys to a new opportunity. And so I'm very grateful at my time that there were some leagues like that. Otherwise, I have no idea what my career would have looked like had it not been for those other leagues and the opportunities I was able to get to play football.
You sat, kind of on the bench at UNI for essentially 4 years. You had 3 years in the Arena League. You had some NFL tryouts. The Packers. You were in NFL Europe. Was there ever a moment, during that 5-year stretch, or really if you had UNI in and it's 7 years, that you thought about quitting?
There was moments, of course, and there was a moment, when I was at UNI, when things weren't working out, where I did kind of have a call with my mom and just kind of go, I don't know where I'm going here. I don't know what the direction is. I still want to play professionally, but this isn't going the way I thought. Should I transfer? Should I just quit? Should I give it up? So there was that moment. And then there was times in arena football, and specifically towards the end of my time in arena football, where I wasn't necessarily saying I'm going to give up on playing football, because I loved playing in arena football and I was able to make a living and do all that. But, there were definitely times when I was going, okay, maybe it's time to give up the dream of playing in the NFL. I mean, who's going to give a 26-year-old, a 27-year-old rookie quarterback an opportunity? And so there were definitely moments where that would enter in, and, I would kind of wrestle with, is it time? Is it time to kind of let that part of things go? But the bottom line, I think what continued to motivate me the whole time was, a lot of people look at my career and they look at it and they say, well, yeah, he sat on the bench for 4 years in college. Then he got cut by the Packers. And then, I'd work in a grocery store, and they look at all these things that have to do with me not being on the football field. And when I look back at my career, I looked and said, okay, I played 1 year in college and I was the player of the year in our conference. I played, I got cut in, did all that. But when I played in the Arena League, we went to 2 championships in 3 years. I was the best quarterback in the league those 3 years. Go to Europe, was the best quarterback statistically in Europe the year that I was there. So everything I saw was every time I actually got a chance to play, I was successful. Right. And so here I am trying to find another opportunity in the NFL, but I wasn't quite ready to give it up because no one had shown me that I couldn't play. It wasn't a situation like
the game hadn't told you yet.
Right, yeah. Nobody, had showed that to me in any way, shape, or form. It was when I played, I was really successful. Now I just need to get an opportunity, and I think that was what drove me more than anything else, is that I didn't want to be the guy that was 40 years old sitting on his couch watching an NFL game going, that could have been me. If somebody would have just given me an opportunity, or, to blame something, or to be angry that I didn't get my opportunity. And, it drove me to just go, hey, I just need to prove this to myself one way or another. Maybe I can't play, and maybe that's why I'm in all these other leagues, but I need to, to be shown that. I need, to prove to myself one way or another. And so it kept me going to say, hey, I want one more opportunity where I feel like it's a legitimate opportunity to prove. And again, I wasn't trying to prove it to everyone else. I was trying to prove it to myself that I could play, or somebody telling me that I couldn't play. And then I felt like I could walk away and go, okay, at least I know. I didn't have to speculate, and I didn't have to be angry and have any animosity towards it. I just wanted to know. And so that's what kept driving me to go, well, let's just, stick it out, because you just never know, and keep pushing. And, you got a good gig in arena football, and it's all going well, and that's great. Keep doing that. But, just in the back of your mind, just keep working, because you got to be ready if that opportunity comes. So once again, it's not like one of those situations where you go, man, I forgot all about that, and I wasn't really prepared when I got my opportunity. I just wanted to stay ready, so if I got it, I could prove one way or another whether I belonged or didn't belong.
I love that. And of course, right after that, you get the opportunity in 1999 when Trent Green goes down before the season. 1999 happens. It's almost too unbelievable. Like, I remember when it was happening, it was so crazy, and it still is in hindsight. I'm so glad you guys are making a movie about it all now, because people need to know this story, because stories like this just do not happen. But you went from guy nobody has ever heard of to NFL MVP, Super Bowl MVP so quickly that all of a sudden it was like, within a couple of years, you went from the backup guy to all of a sudden the guy that all the sexy backups want to take the job. So, and some of those backups were, Mark Bolger and Eli Manning and Josh McCown and Matt Leinart. And, you were constantly kind of having those guys breathing down your neck. What was it like to have, these young hotshot quarterbacks trying to steal your job away, a few years after you were just that guy?
That was nothing that I ever really thought about. That I always felt like, put me on a level playing field and allow me to compete, and I'll win the job. And if I didn't win the job, then I don't deserve to be the starter. And so I was always very realistic with what competition is all about and what sport is all about. And that's what I loved about it. And so that to me was not anything where it's like, oh man, they're bringing in another guy, or they're doing this. Okay, bring them in, whatever. Yeah. And as long as somebody kept it even. But that was the hardest part, in really any business, but in the sports business, when you draft somebody high, or you pay somebody a lot of money, and you've put, kind of your reputation in somebody else, a lot of times the situations aren't fair anymore.
Right.
A lot of times now it becomes, hey, we're going to lean towards this guy and give him every opportunity before the other guy. And that's the part that always got really, really tough. Was it wasn't always based on play, and it wasn't always based on a realistic view of what was going on. Sometimes it was politics, and that was the part you hated. But when it came to just competing, that didn't bother me one bit. I at that point I was like, you can bring in anybody you want. Bring in the top 3 quarterbacks in the league, and let's go. Let's compete, because that's what it was all about. And and I could easily tip my hat and go, okay, I see that guy's better. And and you have to be able to do that in sport. You have to be able to recognize situations, and when you're not the better guy, and when other guys, deserve the opportunity, and you got to cheer for them, and you got to help them as much as you can. But that was nothing that I ever shied away from, or ever had any animosity when my team drafted a guy I didn't care about any of that. I just wanted a ball in my hands and wanted the opportunity to compete and see if I was the best guy.
How close were you to coming back in 2014?
I mean, I was ready. I shouldn't say I was ready, but I mean, I was definitely willing to come back. So when that all kind of came together, I started going in the backyard and working out and throwing the football again, and was definitely open to the possibility of that happening. Now, I mean, whatever that was, it was, and I'm not sure there's any team, or specifically the Cardinals, that would really look at a guy that's been out of the league for 5 years and think that he could come back and play. But I was definitely open to the possibilities if it was something that somebody or the Cardinals wanted to explore. And it's one of the things, I'm staying in shape. I feel great. I mean, I feel like I could still play the game right now. I'm about playing weight, and as you saw, I go out in the backyard and
still wing it.
I can throw the ball far enough, and still believe I have my accuracy and my my mindset. So still feel like I could do it if I needed to.
Well, Kurt, the way we end every episode of the Moonlight Graham Show is with the 5 big questions, and the first question is, who's your all-time favorite teammate?
My favorite teammate? Gosh, I mean that's just, I mean, I don't know how you even answer that.
That's why they're the 5 big questions.
So many teams and so many guys over the years. Wow. Marshall Faulk was a favorite of mine. Just, as player / person, and how we connected on the football field. Incredible. Ernie Conwell was probably my best friend on the Rams team, and so that's another guy big fan of. Larry Fitzgerald with the Cardinals was a guy that I got really, really close to. Unbelievable teammates, in so many facets, the kind of young man that he is. So, I mean, gosh, it's just, that is really, really hard to answer, because you've had so many different guys in so many different capacities that you say your best teammate, that could mean so many different things. But those are a few guys that jump out at me. What's
one moment that you have from your career that reminds you of everything that you love about sports?
Maybe not even sports, but just about football. I think what I loved about football was that it was the ultimate team sport. I coach high school football now, and one thing I always tell my young athletes is that the greatest thing about football is that it's a team sport. When you win, when you go out and have success, it's about a bunch of guys having to do their job, to be successful. And I said, but oftentimes the worst part of football is that it's a team sport, because there's nothing you can go out and do on your own to have success. No one guy can win a game of football. And so that was, to me, what I love so much about this game. And, I love basketball, and I played baseball and soccer and everything. But it's what I loved about football was that it was about a group of people coming together to accomplish something. So, one thing that I think, to me kind of encapsulated everything that I loved about the game and the competition and everything was when the Arizona Cardinals, when we won the championship game, the NFC championship game, and went to the Super Bowl. And kind of that period, leading up to the Super Bowl of watching a bunch of guys that never thought they would be in a Super Bowl, an organization that never thought they could, be at that level, and watching them go through that experience, I think, really kind of brought it all together for me that this is why I play the game. This is why I love this game, is that a bunch of guys that nobody thought could be here, people called us the worst playoff team ever, an organization that had never won and never expected to win, coming together to do something extremely special and compete at a different level, and catapult, all these guys to a different position in life and a different belief and a different perspective, to me is what sport is all about. And that to me was probably that highlight moment, especially later in my career, that was really able to bring everything together and basically say, this is why, I worked so hard. This is why, even though I sat on the bench for 4 years and got cut and worked in a gross, this is why I didn't give up the dream, was to have opportunities like this with 52 other guys, other players, and then the organization, opportunities to do something that people never thought that we could do, to show people that the impossible is possible, especially when it comes to sports. And I think that's what we all love about sports, and that was one of those moments for me.
Is there anything that still nags at you from your career?
Yeah, there's always things that nag at you. Specifically the 2 Super Bowls I lost.
So close.
The first one against New England was simply just because we didn't play our best game. And I think that's what always nags at you as a competitor. To me, it's not always about did we win or did we lose, but it's did we put our best foot forward? I mean, did we play a great game and then get beat by another team that just played a little bit better? And in that New England game, I don't feel like we played our best game. We just didn't come out there and play up to our capabilities. And so that's one thing that nags at me over and over again. The second Super Bowl, not so much, because we weren't supposed to be there and we weren't supposed to compete, and we had a chance, with 2.5 minutes to go,
Yep.
we have a lead in that game. But I think just the interception at the end of the first half is one that just kind of nags at me a little bit, that it just, man, something, if we could have just tackled James Harrison,
right.
Just could have got him to the ground, something, would that have meant that we won that game? And again, we know that, it's one play that leads to how other things play out. But, that's just one of those plays that just kind of nags at you like, gosh, that could have just been a little bit differently, could have played out a little differently. Would that have meant a different result in that game?
What are you most proud of?
What I'm most proud of, I think, is, I would say it's twofold. I would say first, it's the journey. I'm very proud that I have a story unlike anybody else, that I was able to overcome, all those things that people look at as negatives and things that kind of went against me having a chance to play at the NFL level and accomplish what I did, to overcome all that and to go through that journey and to be able to do that is one thing that I'm extremely proud of, because I think it resonates with a lot of people and it really has inspired and encouraged a lot of people. And then I think the second thing, within the sport is being able to take 2 different organizations or be a part of the change of 2 different organizations, like the Rams, who, when I got there, were one of the losingest franchises in the last decade. When I got to the Cardinals, we're one of the losingest franchises in the last 50 years. And to be able to have an impact on those organizations so that when I left, they were seen completely differently than when I arrived. And that, to me, I think when it comes to being a quarterback, or more importantly, when it comes to being a leader in any capacity, that's what it's all about. It's about getting people around you to believe that they're more than what everybody else says they are, or what the perception of them is, and being able to inspire them, to a different standard. And that's probably, when we're talking specifically within the game of football, that's kind of the crown jewel for me, is being able to do that with 2 teams, not just one, right, but be able to have that kind of impact on 2 different teams was really, really cool for me, and something that, again, if I had to play it out, I would have loved to have played for 16 different teams and been able to have that same impact on 16 teams, because that's the coolest part. Yeah, it's great to win Super Bowls and do that, but to impact organizations and change cultures and change the belief and perspective people have of themselves and, of us as a group, was really, to me, the true sign of what a leader is all about, and that's something that I'm extremely proud of.
What's the best advice you've ever received, Kurt?
I think the best piece of advice, and that's kind of like all these other questions, right? I mean, there's so many great pieces of advice that we get over the years, but, kind of shared this story in my Hall of Fame speech. But when I was in high school, I was a basketball player, and, as we talked about, a decent basketball player, but the best basketball player on our team. And, I remember having a scrimmage one time in practice, and, we're practicing and I'm kind of dominating the scrimmage, and it's, really lopsided in our favor. And I remember our coach stopping the scrimmage in the middle of it. And, and he starts yelling and going crazy. And, I'm kind of sitting back going, oh gosh, these guys are going to get it. These guys have been awful. He's going to yell at all those guys. And he came right over to me. And I realized that why he was angry was because of me. And I'm thinking to myself, what in the world? Why are you mad at me? I mean, I'm the one out here that's dominating and doing all this. And, he kind of looked at me and he said, don't ever allow the competition or the circumstances around you to affect you giving your best out here. And so basically what he was saying is, I'm watching you play, and yeah, you're scoring more points or you're doing whatever, but this is not the best that you can play. You're playing down to your circumstances or your competition right now. And I don't ever want to see that again. Don't ever allow something outside of you to affect your mindset and how you go about doing your job. And that, to me, I think was, the greatest piece of advice I got, especially early in my life, to go, oh my gosh, I never thought of that before. So much was, well, am I better than the guy across from me? Or
right.
Am I outperforming the guy across from me? And that's good enough. And he was just saying, don't ever let that be good enough. Every time you do something, be great at it. Every time you do something, regardless of what's going on around you, focus on being the best that you can be. And that's something that really hit home with me very early on, and something that I tried to apply in everything that I did, and something that I still try to apply today. It doesn't matter what I'm doing, whether I'm doing TV stuff or radio stuff. How do I set myself apart? How can I be great at it? Whether I'm being a parent or a husband, how do I be the best at those things in my life? And so I'll lean that direction because it was so impactful for me at such a young age.
I love that. Now, Kurt, we're going to post this episode here in a couple of weeks, and along with all of our episodes, we usually do what's called a Moonlight Challenge to get our audience to, whether it's running a 400 or running a mile or making 100 three-pointers or something like that. Is there something that you do regularly with your workout that we could incorporate into our Moonlight Challenge when we post this episode?
Well, man.
Something that you'd want to do and we could compete against you.
Yeah, we could definitely do something. So, here's the little workout that I've been doing since we've been kind of quarantined. I actually posted something on Twitter today, so you can kind of check it out just as a little challenge to some other guys. But so what I do is I pick, 6 different spots on the basketball court, outside the 3-point line. So I start on the baseline, and then I work my way around to the top of the key. And so what I do is I got to make 10 shots. However long it takes me, but I run back and forth from baseline to baseline, rebound my own shots, and you got to make 10. And then I go to the next spot. Actually I take a little break, obviously, and then I go to the next spot. But and I'm shooting to make, I guess, what would be in those 6 different spots, 60 shots. As fast as I can, getting some cardio in, and obviously trying to miss as few as possible, both for my ego and also for my cardio, so I don't have to run as far. But that's kind of a challenge that I do, every few days as part of my workout.
Sounds good. That'll be our Moonlight Challenge then. We'll have the 6 spots all around the 3-point arc, and the guy who can complete each spot in the fastest time, they'll win the challenge. There
you go. I like that. So just, because like I said, I take breaks in between, so maybe just have guys time each little spot and see how quickly they can make it.
Yep, and
or even if it's not timed, so to speak, you could just see, out of those shots, how many shots it takes you to make the 60. You know what I mean?
Yep, and we'll put it up on Twitter for that week.
Awesome, sounds good.
Hey guys, thanks once again to listening to today's episode of the Moonlight Graham Show. And even though I do most of the interviews here on the podcast, there is a ton of work that happens behind the scenes that you guys don't see that make each episode possible. So I got to give a shout out to the Moonlight Graham Show team. First of all, Brian Sandvig, our producer. Brian does all of the post-production work, and in real life, he's not just a podcast producer, he's also a real estate agent. So if you're looking to buy or sell a home down in the Kansas or Missouri areas, give Brian Sandvig a call. Next guy on that list is Brendan Gargano. Brendan does all of our design and artwork here on the podcast. He's one of the most talented artists I've ever met, and I love all of his work. If you need any help on the design side with logos or anything like that, give Brendan Gargano a call. The next guy on that list is Andy Flattery, my older brother. Andy, of course, has done some of the interviews here on the podcast. He also is a certified financial planner. He owns a business called Simple Wealth Planning. If you need any help in that area, check Andy Flattery out. And then, of course, the trusty co-host, Tom Griffin. and my younger brother, Neil Flattery. Those guys are just busy being husbands, being fathers, they're family men, but also they do a ton of work here on the show. So thanks again for listening. We really appreciate you guys subscribing and supporting the Moonlight Graham Show.